it's the first episode of the Rejuvenated Meet the Fresh. So as I said, no, nobody asked for this, but that has not stopped me before. So anyway, today we are talking about the Foreign Service Officers exam and also the life of a foreign service officer. So I felt that this was important kasi I've been seeing posts of the DFA inviting people to apply. I think it's something that would be interesting to a lot of people to know about kasi iba din yung buhay FSO. Not just because you really go through a very rigorous exam process that actually, if you pass that exam, creates a disputable presumption that you're very, very smart. But apart from that, very interesting then that the work that they do and the lives that they will have to lead because of the nature of the work that they do. Diba? So now, I am very lucky to have with us, we are very lucky to have with us three guests, three FSOs actually, from the Department of Foreign Affairs. So they are at different stages. So these guys took the FSO exam at different dates or different periods. So in terms of the level that they are now in the department, magkakaiba din yan. And also lucky for us is that we're going to have different perspectives on the kind of things that they do because magkakaiba din actually yung work nila and the experiences that they had working for the department. Okay, so without further ado, instead of introducing them myself, I will ask them to introduce themselves kasi I think it would be better for them to parang highlight what they think is the most interesting about themselves. So anyway, let us start with uunahin ko si Marco. So let us start with the person closest to me according to law. So okay, so the first
and domicile.
The first guest that we have is Mr. Marco Harder, who also happens to be my husband. But that is not the best thing about him. Marco, let us know more about you.
Hello, I'm Marco Harder. I'm a Foreign Service Officer at the Department of Foreign Affairs. I joined in January 2020 after taking the exam taking the first step of the stage of the exam in 2018. I have a stake in getting the word out for the Foreign Service Officers exam because I'm detailed at the Human Resource Management Office, and we always encourage more people to take the exam because we want to make sure that we have the best talent in the organization. Did you want me to talk about anything else?
I think you should talk about where you are right now, which unit in the department you're with.
Right. So I'm in the Human Resources Management Office. Well, by next week I won't be because I'm going into cadetship, and maybe we can talk about it in detail later when we talk about the entire FSO experience. Both of the two gentlemen with us, they have already taken their cadetship. I am still due to take it on the 7th of June. So that should be an interesting thing to talk about later on.
Yes. Okay, thanks, Marco. So now I am introducing our next guest, JJ Domingo, who is actually not in the Philippines right now. So JJ, can you tell us more about where you are and what you're doing right now for the department?
Yeah, so my name is JJ. Hello, everyone. I took the FSO exam in 2014, and then I joined the department in, I think, 2015. So I think I took the exam in 2013 pala, and then joined the department 2014. So I'm now in Geneva, Switzerland. So I handle several UN-related issues. Before that, I was in Beijing for 3 years. And before that, I was in Manila for, I think, I don't remember, 3 or 4 years. So that's the cycle of a rotation. So you get to stay in Manila for 2 to 3 years, and then you go abroad for 6 years. So I'm on my 4th year of my first tour of duty.
Okay. Thanks, JJ. And last but not the least, so Mikhal de Dios also recently what do you call it, repatriated or recalled to the
Recall.
Philippines. So he was assigned abroad for the past several years. Mikhal, can you tell us more about where you've been the past years?
Of course, first of all, thanks, Cecile, for having me as a guest. And I'm really honored to be with my fellow FSOs here. It's great to have this chance to talk about life as an FSO, which I really hope we'll get into the details of later. Just a brief introduction to myself. I was formerly, sorry, I took the exam in 2009, but we formally entered in 2011 as the first batch under President Aquino. And this is basically my 10th year, therefore, in service in the DFA. Briefly, I used to be in the APEC unit of the DFA before getting posted abroad to Mexico. And then I got cross-posted to Madrid. That was my first term. And now I'm back here in Manila in the Office of ASEAN Affairs as an acting director for the social cultural pillar. So very happy to be here.
Thank you. So I've been seeing posts of the DFA, and I know that the exam, well, the submission of the exam requirements is on the 17th of June. Right, Marco? Right.
Yes, the deadline was extended to the 17th of June for
So
all
can
the
you,
applications. Yes,
can
for
you
all the
tell us-
applications that will be submitted at the Home Office. But I think we have a shorter deadline a closer deadline for those Filipino nationals, eligible Filipinos that are based abroad who wish to submit their applications at the embassies. The deadline for that funnel for applications would be the 10th of June.
Okay. So you mentioned eligibility. So what is the eligibility to at least start the FSO exam process? Who do I need to be? What do I need to be before I can apply?
Well, you need to be number one, a Filipino citizen. If I'm not mistaken by birth, I'll have to check I'll pull up the actual file that we put out now. Additionally, you need to have a 4-year bachelor's degree under your belt at least, and at least 2 years of work experience or postgraduate degree, right? And then there are just requisite forms that you need to attach to the application. But the long and short of it is that you're a Filipino citizen, you have a bachelor's degree and some work experience or a master's degree under your belt.
So it's supposed to be some work experience or a master's degree. So
Yes.
somebody who's fresh out of college cannot apply. Yeah.
To my knowledge,
But
no.
at the same time, the department has also been highlighting the fact that the age requirement has already been removed. Diba?
Yes.
So can you, I guess I'll ask JJ na lang. Ikaw talaga tinanong ko. So can you explain to us what the age requirement was before, and then what's the rationale why that age requirement has been removed?
Well, I think the age requirement before was, if I'm not mistaken, 35 years old. So I have no idea why there was an age requirement in the first place. So that's probably why it was removed. But before that, I think they made exceptions for organic DFA personnel. So if you've been with the department before you took the exam, then you're exempted from that age requirement. So I'm just glad that they remove it because personally for me it really doesn't make sense. I think it's more like there was this idea that you need to have to enter the department young enough for you to have a full career, meaning that you would be able to reach the rank of chief of mission, which is the highest rank in the foreign service, before you turn 65, which is the mandatory age of retirement. So maybe that was the rationale before that, but I haven't been in the department long enough to know. So maybe we can ask our most senior officers.
Yeah, Mikhal was raising his hand earlier. So Mikhal, if you can enlighten us on the age requirement.
JJ hit it on the head now, that it's really, to my knowledge, it was really so you could have a full career. That's why the age requirement is put in place, which was 36 actually, to my knowledge. And that is correct. It was waived for any organic DFA staff or personnel.
Mm.
But now DFA has seen that it is to the department's advantage to have applicants who have previous work experience
Yeah.
as opposed to being fresh grads
Yeah.
or who have a postgraduate degree. Because we are benefiting from people who've got that previous experience, that I think, for lack of a better term, maturity
Yeah.
in handling any job. Doesn't That's a nice thing though. There's no age requirement, and you can come from any sector, any walk of life whatsoever, as long as you're a Filipino citizen and meet the academic requirements. You can take the exam, and it's been to the benefit nga of the department. We have people who are former soldiers, former teachers. We have lawyers and accountants. We have um, people with all kinds of specializations, and that's actually a very good thing for us to have.
Yeah, I've actually found it before. Unfortunate na merong age requirement because I agree with you. These people who are, let's just say, a bit more senior, than the usual people who, enter or join the DFA before, they already have substantial work experience. And if you think about the nature of the job of an FSO, they are actually required to take on a lot of responsibilities. And this is something that you need somebody with maturity, you need somebody with previous experience making decisions, that who will be able to handle this, right? And then after all, at the end of the day, they're also representing the Philippines. So it's not just to the department's advantage, it's actually to the country's advantage that we have people who are very capable, who have already proven themselves elsewhere. Kasi maganda din yun, di ba? That they've proven themselves elsewhere. So meron din silang dalang a certain gravitas, I guess, when they deal with their counterparts abroad. Kasi I have noticed that it's not just you're an officer, you're expected to actually have so many skills. I now understand that FSOs are actually para silang I mentioned to him before, ako ang tingin ko lang, para kayong management trainees. 'Di ba? Na kasi sometimes the corporations get a batch of management trainees that are really groomed for leadership positions, and iba talaga yung training track nila and development track nila vis-a-vis the other employees. So, and then they are expected to parang be assigned to an office and be able to be productive. You mentioned earlier, that you took the FSOs at different time periods. So May 2009, 2013, and 2018. From before until now, nagkaroon ba ng changes in the process, or it's still the same process that every applicant has to undergo?
If I may?
Yeah. Thanks, Mikhal.
Yeah. Also napansin ko rin na if we have another talk like this, maybe we could also get a woman's perspective. Kasi iba rin yung nararanasan nila sa department. And I'm also happy to report ang laki ng proportion ng mga female FSOs sa department. Actually, female staff sa DFA. I think it's a majority female organization already.
We're at 52, 54. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. But yeah, to go back to the question, yeah, it has changed. Before my time, the exams were only 3 stages, which was civil service professional exam, written exam, and then the 3-day written exam, and then the 3-day oral exam. And then when I came in, it was already 5 stages because they had added a preliminary interview and a psychological exam. And now the slight change now is that the psychological exam, which used to be the last one, is now the second to the last. So the last one now is the 3-day oral exam, if I'm not mistaken. No. And yeah, that's the change that I've observed.
Okay, I got curious about the psychological exam. Kasi I think for some of the other stages, you can actually prepare. Diba? You can study, you can practice speaking, so you're able to articulate your ideas. Pero yung psych exam, what exactly, if you know, what are they looking for? Is there a way for you to prepare yourself for taking and passing the psych exam? Maybe I'll ask all of you your opinions based on your experience.
Do you want to take it, JJ?
JJ.
No, I mean, for me, personally, to prepare for the psych exam, you just have to be yourself. Because I told myself, if I try to fake it and then I flunk, then parang I wouldn't be able to forgive myself. But I think what happens in a psychological exam is that they identify the profile of an average FSO or a average reasonable FSO. And then they look at your personality traits and see if you would fit that profile. So usually the result of the psych exam would be either you are not recommended,
right,
or you are recommended, or you are recommended with reservation. So if you're recommended with reservation, it means that maybe you can fit the profile, but there are some personality traits that might not be useful for that role, and it's now up to the board. So we have this board of foreign service examination. So basically, that's the senior leadership of the department, and they would deliberate whether or not. They're supposed to deliberate based on the result of the psych exam and see if okay with the reservations that the examiners have. So for me, I think I was recommended with reservations. So there's a running joke in the batch now. Those of us who are recommended with reservations, medyo pasang-awa sa psych exam. But I think it's really just to see if your personality fits the profile of an FSO. It's very unique. You really need to have this capacity to learn and to absorb new things and the willingness to do different things. So I think there is a certain psychological profile that is required for that.
So it's not so much like you're flunking the exam. It's just that based on the findings, it's either they don't think you're a fit for the job.
Yeah.
Or they're not sure.
I mean, look, I think I can speak about the psychological exam because among the three of us, I don't know, but I took the exam, the battery of exams twice. Once in the same group as JJ in 2013 and another time in 2018. And in the first round, in the first attempt, it was the psychological evaluation that I didn't pass or I didn't get through. JJ pretty much hit it on the head kasi you want a certain psychological makeup for an FSO because number one, you really have to deal with a lot of decision making, and sometimes the ambiguity is really tough for someone who may not have the right psychological makeup to be able to deal with that and make a decision within a particular time frame. Secondly, I think there's clearly the cultural element of it, interagency, inter-office, when you deal with your counterparts. There's the cultural element of it, and sometimes meron ka ng ambiguity with the information that you have at your disposal, and then there's that extra layer of complexity of how you now have to deal at the social level with your counterparts and everyone else that you need to deal with, and it's I think at best the psychological profile, the ideal psychological profile that we have is really a fuzzy and amorphous idea, kasi you can never truly predict the situations you'd be in, even within the same office, at least in this work. So I think a consistent theme that I'm sensing is that they're looking for someone with adaptability and handling that and adapting without really making a lot of noise, because sometimes that complicates things further, right? Because you can be adaptable but complain a lot along the way, right? So at least based on my experience, at least the way I remember answering the first evaluations and the second time I took the exam. So yeah.
So there's the civil service exam.
Yeah.
There's the written exam. And then
there's the preliminary interview first before you are endorsed for the 3-day
Sorry,
written.
to add to that, to what Marco and JJ have already said.
Sure.
Regarding psych lang, just before we move on.
Sure.
I think one of the things from the time I spent talking to other people who had taken it more than once, and from people who had actually evaluated applicants, it's safe to say one of the things that they are probably testing for is for somebody who can subsume their ego. Because when you're in the FS, it's drilled into us from day one. In the DFA, this is a very hierarchical organization. Parang sundalo nga in many respects. Kasi when you get sent abroad, minsan what you can't say anything anymore. That's the mission, etc. Diba? Lalong-lalo na when you're at an embassy or at a mission, it's always drilled into us. There's only one star at post, and that's the ambassador, or that's the head of mission. Huwag kang magpapaka. Parang don't try to outshine your boss. Parang your ego is not the point here. You're here to do your job, support your boss. And when you write things, your boss is going to put his or her name on that paper.
Yeah.
Diba? Yeah. So it doesn't matter how much of a hotshot you think you are. That work is going to go in support of a certain mission. So it's, of course, it's not guaranteed that people can always put that aside, but that's probably considered ideal if you could do that. So ego-wise,
That's actually the same experience that I had working before in government offices. Kasi pag staff ka talaga, di ba? You prepare your principal, you protect your principal, and kaya nga complete staff work, di ba? No surprises kasi kawawa naman yung principal mo eh. So anyway, I guess actually the very hierarchical nature of the DFA is also the same for the law. Yun yung nakikita ko ha, kasi kunyari in law firms, syempre kung ano na yung sinabi ng senior partner or even yung the handling partner, kung how yung i-approach ninyo yung case, that's what you do regardless of your personal feelings na dapat ganito yan or 'di ba, you will have the privilege of leading the team when you're with at their level, but until you are yun muna. Oo. So I also want to move on to the other parts of the exam process just so people understand why it takes almost a year, right? From the time that you apply until the time when you get the results. So the civil service exam results are released mga when after you take the exam? How many months after?
6 months. Give or take, it could be as short as 2 months to 3 months, maybe as long as 6 months. But yeah, it's around that time. It has varied.
So that's the longest part of the process.
Not all the time.
Okay.
Not all the
between
time.
each stage, it's literally months, diba?
Yes.
Between each of the 5 stages, it can literally take months.
Yes.
And what is the percentage of the people who apply and the people who are finally taken in as the new batch of FSOs?
Maybe I can walk you through the second time, the entire cycle. No?
Okay.
When I took the exam in 2018, I think I took the what do you call this? The CSE exam sometime in January. We received the results sometime, I think in May, no? And then around that time, maybe a week or two after, they set us up for the preliminary interview. And a week after, which was already in June, we did a 3-day written exam. And that took a while because I think for the written exam, we got the results, trying to remember, maybe August. So June, July, August, 3 months. And then we were endorsed to the psychological evaluation, which took about a month or two. And then once that was in, we were given about 2 to 3 weeks interval between that time and then the oral exams. And then we did the orals, I think, in November. The results that from that entire cycle, we received news January 2019. So it's a full year, at least for the cycle that I've had. I understand that for the 2019 cycle, it was a bit longer because we had disruptions in 2020. So yeah.
So for each of you guys, which part of the exam process was the most difficult?
For me, I think the first part was the most difficult. I mean, most people would say it's the easiest, but for me, that's the most difficult. Kasi it's really a actually pen and paper test now. It has a lot of maths, a lot of, and then may time pressure. So for me, that's the most difficult. I think once you get past that, the written exam is also quite challenging, but you need maybe for that you need a stamina. Um, but yeah, for me, it's the first part. I don't know about the others.
Oh, just before we move on to the others, there you mentioned the written exam. The written exam is about what? It's also about international relations, diplomacy, etc.
No.
Sorry, would you like to go step by step description of each
Oh, sige.
step para alam ng audience natin
Okay,
step
sige.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Pero answer muna which one's the most difficult for you. Before we move
Okay.
on.
For me, written and oral. 3-day written and
Yeah.
3-day oral. Kasi the written one because of the substantive questions, the oral one because of sheer nerves. Talaga. Ginigrill ka eh.
Yeah, for me, I would say it was really the written exam, both for the same reasons that Mikhal and JJ said. Because number one, you have no way of reviewing because you have no idea what's going to be the written exam. You have the themes, you have the topics, but you don't know what's going to be in there. So there's an element of luck, I think, involved. No, but at least for me, in both situations where I took the written exam, it was really stamina because my hand was cramping by day 3 after writing all of that stuff down. And sometimes I've seen in both times I've taken it, some people fall out on day 2, day 3. It's just grueling, just having to write stuff for a protracted period of time. The orals, you're right. It was also nerves, particularly, and maybe we can get into detail of it. No, particularly when when you'd have to go through the last part of the orals, which was the formal dinner with heads of offices, and in some cases, heads of posts that are down here in Manila for consultations.
Thanks, Marco. So now, let's go back to Mikhal. So can you please lead us through the entire process of the exam?
Sorry, very briefly lang.
Okay.
First part, civil service professional exam, which JJ said is a timed multiple choice exam. And yeah, that's time pressure. You're doing math, you're doing logic problems. Then if you get past that, you go to the preliminary interview. That's step 2, where DFA officials will, around 3 of them when I had it, will take those who passed and then maybe talk to you for about 20 minutes. They'll talk about practically anything that they might want to. They'll talk about they'll look at your resume and ask you about you to get to know you better. And then when you get past that, there's a 3-day written exam. And then we can go into detail in that. That is two topics per day. And that's all handwritten. And then when you get past that 3-day written exam, you go to the psychological test now. That's how the process is now. Psych exam. And then if you pass the psych evaluation, you go to the 3-day oral exam, which we can also go into detail later if you wish. So you know siya basically.
Sige. So let's get into the written exam. So these exams are taken in consecutive days.
Yes.
Okay. So kaya naman mapapagod yung kamay mo talaga. But now that, we're in 2021, are there any moves to change the manner by which the written exam is taken?
Really, the proctoring that's tricky.
Mm-mm.
Because in the DFA, it's one of the most security heavy events actually, the DFA, that written exam.
Mm-mm.
Because you actually have a battery of people making sure that the exams integrity is maintained. There is the dependency, of course, on the CSE because in full disclosure, I think in 2020 we were not. There was a long delay or there were no qualifying exams. There were certain CSE exams that could not happen last year, right? Because of the restrictions, and they couldn't figure out what to do. No, but I can speak with confidence that for the 2019 examinees, we all did the preliminary interview with them. We did them virtually. All of them had to do it via Zoom. We had to rehearse how the person would have to walk. We had to rehearse our examinees that you need to be like 10 feet away And when you get the visual cue to walk forward, then that's the time we start the interview. So there's that. That's the movement that's
Yeah.
been going on from the examination standpoint.
I think that's eventually going to happen because even the bar exams are going to be, I don't know if computerized is the correct term, but at least not handwritten anymore. So if we can do it for the bar exams, diba, with thousands of examinees across the country, then certainly. And I think it's also going to be good for the department kasi, diba, like the lifting of the age restriction, if you're able to take in, have applicants from across the country na hindi na sila magiging limited by the need to travel here,
Right.
it's just going to be good for everyone.
Correct. And if I may just interject again, and that's a sad story, for the 2020 round of written exams, because we had some people who could not pursue pursue the exam further because of the travel restrictions. Because we had passers from various non-NCR areas, and sayang, at least from a volume standpoint, that could have those could have been really good episodes for all we know.
Just on a point of curiosity, so kunwari I pass and I'm, let's say, from Mindanao, I don't have funds. Will the DFA help or hindi? Bahala si applicant talaga. Kasi right now, before with the previous framework where you need to come to Manila and go through the process here. So, and then lalo na it takes months for the process to be completed. Hindi naman pwedeng I will travel from Mindanao and stay here and wait, without any certainty dun sa result. So, does the DFA help in those instances or hindi?
To my knowledge, we've not done that. Most of the people I know, sometimes then people are based outside of the Philippines. They had to fly themselves in out of their own pocket. So I've not heard of an instance where we've done that.
But I think if you look at the guidelines, if there are enough applicants in a certain city where DFA has a presence, they can also hold the exams there. But it depends on how many applicants will there be.
Yes, that's usually the initial stage where that happens. Of course, when you're down to the few hundred that might be taking the written exam, the 3-day one, they'll probably have you all come to Manila already for that.
Okay. And the questions for the written exams change from year to year. It's not like the usual government exams where parang meron na talaga silang exam bank or question bank, diba? And then they just get. So this one changes from year to year.
Yes.
As with the
it changes
examiners
from year to year because of,
go ahead, JJ.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it changes every year because most of the questions actually are more reflective of the prevailing trends in politics, culture, society. So the questions in the 90s would be mostly about whether or not we should join WTO, for example. Because that's like the big debate then, but now it's like established that we need free trade. So maybe the questions now would be about populism. So I think it reflects trend.
That's right.
I mean, if you look at the
current.
structure of right. I mean, if you look at the structure of the written exam, it's very broad. So the first part, I think you have history, English, foreign language, Filipino. But the 60% of it would be international affairs. So anything IR, anything at all. It can be pop culture. It can be society or politics, and Philippine affairs. So Philippine affairs can also range from history to Gabby and Sharon Cuneta pop culture kind of question. So it's really like you really need to be aware of what's happening around you. I think that's the point of the written.
And the examiners.
And you have to be able to articulate it.
Who are the examiners? And do they change from year to year?
Yes.
Yes.
They do. There's a panel of experts that they will tap, usually academics, who will write the questions for the various areas that they will be testing people on. And then they're also given back the answers for them to evaluate. I, in fact, recall, if I can give some samples of the questions that were the past. I mean, they're all paso na to, diba? So, for example, you have to write in English and Filipino.
Yes.
There's one section exclusively about your Filipino writing skills. So one of them was like, ano ang pinakamalubhang bantang panlabas? Bakit at ano ang dapat gawin para masolusyonan ito? That's the Filipino writing part. Tapos there was something about culture naman. Choose a national artist. What are his or her contributions and how would you promote their work as an FSO? A practical question. Meron din namang political such as and world history such as the triangular trading network between Europe, the Americas, and West Africa. How did it operate and what were its effects on the three regions? And then what are the what's the significance of the Colombian exchange? Something like that. So you really don't know where they will get the question from, especially the history portion. In current affairs, you can be pretty sure they will be talking about something that's very up to date now. But they'll ask for your analysis on it. And then they will also ask for your analysis of Philippine affairs and the international sphere. Sphere. So it's as our two friends here said, you don't know where it's going to come from. You have a general idea, but you really don't know what the specifics will be.
I think that's a very interesting point that you raised, so that it's about Philippine affairs, and because I think maybe this is largely conjecture, no, but the people should not come into this exam thinking it's just going to be international affairs, because at the end of the day, we're looking for public servants who will serve Philippine interests. And I say this because in both the times that I took the exams, there were very local issues that we were number one asked to analyze and see its implication in the way we conduct ourselves in the national arena. But also, and I think just to supplement Mikhal's point, you're asked to analyze, and this is also where they ask you to take a position and justify that position.
Exactly.
I think that's a and I based on our discussion earlier, I think this is an important skill that they're looking for. Are you able to analyze the situation, take a position, and where applicable, formulate recommendations around it? So, yon.
Okay, so now you've done the exam. The next stage is the orals, right?
The psychological evaluation.
Okay. So, but we've already discussed that it's actually just you going through the process, and then based on the results, whether they recommend you with the reservations or not recommend you. Okay. So the next is the orals, and what happens during the orals exam?
Mga mas fresh na ako ng orals.
I think we had a 2-day. I had a 2-day round. We had a 2-day round. I don't know kung 3 days kayo non, Mikhal.
3 days kami.
Maybe it's also a function of volume or number of examiners.
Perhaps.
But there are definitely going to be 3 components of it, whether it takes 2 or 3 days. The first component is really another panel interview, and it's not the same as the preliminary interview, because the panel is going to be even more varied. I remember in the panel that that interviewed me, there was someone from CSC. There was I think Professor Ambet Ocampo was also there, and then you had several. Well, they're now heads of posts because they've been deployed, but they were heads of offices during that time. And the questions could vary. Sometimes it's about their CV. Sometimes it's a question on again. I find that it's weird. I keep on using position because they ask you, like, for example, you're coming from the private sector. You have this experience. You're probably making this amount of money. Why you do this? Why are you doing this? There's a question of motivation, and they'll press you on that sometimes. Right? So that's the first part, the panel interview, typically 30-40 minutes. The second phase of it is a group dynamics exercise where you're grouped into teams, and you'll be given certain topics that will have assigned tasks to it. Usually it's in the form of a current affairs or international affairs topic, and then I think you take the anti and the pro side, and it feels like a debate, but when I did it, it didn't feel like it as well, because I don't know. I don't know, but it didn't feel like a debate. It was really just an exposition of our analysis and the positions we took as a team. But I think an important element there is they also observe you as you plan for the the presentation. So I'm thinking baka it's really they want to see who's taking charge here, who's the person who's able to bring out the best ideas from the group. Sino yung pastar dito? Sino yung, di ba? I think that's also part of it, no? Suspicion. And then there's the formal dinner. Yun yung nakaka-nervous because heads of posts yan, heads of offices. You're expected to be in Filipiniana, and then you'll have dinner, you'll have to mingle with them, and then you'll have the... Ganun pa rin naman sa amin eh. We had a fishbowl and we were given a topic. And you practically had maybe a minute, 2 minutes to prepare, and you'd have to speak for 3 to 5 minutes on the topic in front of your heads of posts, heads of offices, etc. So yun ang oral.
You stand before them kasi di ba you're having dinner?
Well, they will well, look, I think that dinner is framed with the expectation that they will, FSOs will have to talk about a certain topic because your examiners are also going to be there having dinner with you and grading under their tables. So
your dinner mates are your examiners from the panel interview.
Yeah.
In fact,
So,
they're the ones.
Okay. So pag sasagutin mo na yung tanong, they require you to stand up and go somewhere?
Yes.
There's a stage.
There's a stage.
Oh, there's a stage. And I think you also forgot to mention na during the orals, nasa hotel kayo nakastay. Was it the same for everyone? So kayo din, Mikhal and JJ? Ay, hindi.
We showed up at the hotel, had dinner, did the exam, then left.
Yeah.
We didn't actually stay at the hotel.
Kayo, Marco, nakastay kayo, di ba?
No, we didn't stay.
Ah, okay. I
We didn't
thought
stay.
you
Okay.
No. I was
You stay.
considering
Marcos, ang
booking a
galing
night
punta
there. Ayaw kami nun eh. Saan kayo nun?
Saan ka nagpunta nun, Marco?
Hindi, uwi ako nun. No, but I did consider booking a night there. It was, diba? I was
That would have been
balling.
nice,
I was still in the private sector. But yeah,
That would have been nice.
I think some actually booked a night in the hotel kasi nga one of my exam batchmates was staff that was assigned in Tokyo PE. Sabi niya, I'll just book 2-3 days here since andito rin naman yung exam sa sa Diamond. So doon sila
Guys,
nagpalit na Filipiniana.
If I can ask, do you recall what you pulled out of the bowl? The situation. What did you have to talk about? Naalala niyo ba?
Naalala ko pa. I was asked to talk about coffee.
Coffee.
And I was very thankful that it was just a very broad topic. So
Very
many
good.
angles to choose. So nagawa natin ng paraan.
JJ.
So,
do you
Mikhal.
recall?
JJ.
Yeah, I was asked to talk about the shift to K to 12. So parang, in our case, it was a parang role playing. So you're supposed to be like the CHED commissioner trying to convince the regional directors, parang something like that. Yeah.
So iba, Mikhal.
Sa amin, everything was a role play as well, but we were all role playing DFA officials naman. So a friend of mine said, "Oh, you're the DFA, you're the ambassador to Egypt. You're opening an exhibition on Jose Rizal. That's fantastic. Super easy to talk about." I think mine was I had to talk about the Philippines human rights record as the DFA spokesperson.
This was in 2011.
Sorry?
This was in 2009.
2009.
Oh.
So, and then one of the examiners commented afterwards that you sounded like you were delivering a funeral. Ganun. Pero yung
GMA time,
yes,
right?
that was GMA's time. So talk about the human rights record to the press. Ganun. So situationer. I think the best episode from that evening was my batchmate. Hindi ko na sabihin yung pangalan niya, pero he had a fantastic answer. Yung, you are the Philippine representative to the non-aligned movement. Deliver the opening. And when he got up on stage, it was clear he had no idea what the non-aligned movement was. So his answer was, "We are gathered here today on this momentous occasion to do things of great import. I am sure we will have a very productive morning." Tapos sabi ng examiner, yung batang to, wala siyang sinasabi pero naniniwala ko sa kanya eh. Pero magaling siya. Pasado, di ba? So, that just goes to show, even in the written exam, if you don't know the answer, it really looks at how you're dealing with the pressure.
Yeah.
What's your grace under fire? They don't need to have somebody who knows all the answers. They need somebody who is a quick learner, who can adapt, and who can really make the best out of a bad situation, even if diba, all the chips are down. So that was illustrative for me as a young FSO. I'm happy my batchmate passed. He deserves it. He's a fantastic officer, and they made the right decision putting him in the service because he handled it.
I just remembered na kailangan din pala ninyo ng foreign language, right?
Yes.
That was part of the exam, right? I think written.
Yes, 5% around about.
Yeah, 5%.
So you were, if I recall correctly, yung kwento ni Marco, you were asked to answer a question in the foreign language of your choice. Tama ba?
I can only speak for the foreign language that I took, which was German. There's the grammatical, in some cases multiple choice pa nga. But there was a section at the end, parang there was a communication task. In my case, it was sending a letter of invitation to I think to the German embassy yata or something for a dinner that we're hosting, parang ganun. So may functional. I don't know the other languages though, how they test it.
Ikaw, JJ, meron kang ano foreign language?
I took Japanese. I think the foreign language portion of the exam is parang for me it's easier than the usual foreign language test. I don't think they put that much emphasis on it, to be honest.
Yep.
I think they just need you to have like maybe a working understanding of a foreign language, but I don't think they expect you to be very fluent in it based on the exam. So for me, like the Japanese exam, it was really easy. So I was already extra 5 points now from the entire written exam. So yeah, so for me it's bonus.
Ikaw, Mikhal.
Ano rin eh. I took German, but from what I saw, I was asking around sa mga kaibigan who had a different language. The difficulty level was actually all across the board regarding the languages. So if you were taking something like Spanish and 50% of the applicants took Spanish, actually mahirap yung exam nila. Yung French din, during our time, mahirap din. I think they were asked to write a movie review in French. Yung sa German naman namin was introduce yourself to your next door neighbor. Parang ganun na yung pinasulat sa multiple choice, madaling-madali, hi, hello, what's your name? So they didn't give the same level of difficulty across the board.
Yeah. What I hear is it depends on the on the DFA pool of language specialists. Because there are many like fluent Spanish and French speakers. So we have like a pool of competent examiners, and we have fewer Japanese or Arabic or Chinese. So mas madali yung other languages.
Most likely.
But for an applicant to be successful, hindi naman talaga kailangan ng marunong siya. Pero at the very least, dapat meron siyang foreign language.
Yes.
Yes, I think.
Although theoretically, you can pass kahit na wala kasi 5% lang naman.
That's right. That's right.
There's a selection of languages that you can take an exam in, pero hindi lahat accepted.
Oh, okay.
For example, they won't accept, Swahili. Well, not yet. Pero the ones that are in demand are Mandarin and Arabic right now.
Yeah, you can pass it mathematically. I mean, in fact, you can 75 is rated. So if you nail your English, your international affairs, and your Philippine affairs, you're good to go. No, but more than the language competency, I think what this tells us, as people who are hiring for FSOs, is that at the very least, we want someone who has the curiosity and maybe put some effort in learning a language other than what they're required to learn, diba? Because you will face these situations where, in order to function, you need to at least have basic linguistic capabilities in that host country.
One other piece of advice to those who might be taking the exam, follow all instructions and don't ever be late. Because if you are late
Yes.
by 1 minute, pagsasarang ka ng pinto, you flunked for that year.
Yeah.
Ganun ka stricto. So they are not just testing your knowledge, you're testing your ability to follow orders. So you must, they follow the, like, in my time, it was number every page, handwritten, write your name, and don't be late. There was one story where somebody was in the middle of the 3-day exam, came 2 minutes late back from lunch, and that was it. They had flunked. Come back next year, sabi sa kanila.
Yeah.
And then if you decide not to continue at any stage, that means that next year you start from the beginning again.
Yes.
Right? There's no...
Aren't there not certain, I don't know, Marco might know better. There are certain stages where you can start from that stage, I think, written in Psych, if I'm not mistaken, or oral.
I think as a general rule, you start from the beginning, right? But I think if yung orals yung hindi mo napasa, I think you can retake from the oral stage
From the
the
oral
following year. Yeah, because I mean, you've passed 4 of 5. Why? I think they really are very particular about the psychological exam.
Very, yeah.
Because for all intents and purposes, it's not just psychological makeup; it's also a test of character. So they're very particular about that. But yeah, as a general rule, you start from the beginning when you have to retake it the following year or some other year.
Thanks. So now we've gone through the whole process. How long does it take until you hear back whether good news or bad news yung out?
But there are two things to that, no? And I don't know what the experience of Mikhal and JJ are. No? Kasi it's one thing to be told of the results of the exam. It's another thing to be appointed. So dalawa yon. I mean, the DFA, if conditions are right, can communicate the results as soon as they get the consensus from the examiners, right? But in our case, natagalan din yung appointment. Diba? May announcement kami January 2019. Appointments came August or September. I can't remember.
And by appointments, you mean issuance of the appointment papers?
From the office of the president, yes.
President. We had to wait a whole year because we had to wait for a new president to come in.
Yes,
so our timing was such that outgoing si GMA, we had to wait for President Aquino to come in. Took us over a year of waiting just to get formally appointed. Even though we already knew the results in 2010. 2011 pa kami nakapasok ng DFA.
But wouldn't that mean that for 1 year, walang new batch ng...
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And we have a similar case this year. Because nga yung natagalan yung 2019 intake. I mean, I'm happy that some of them already assumed, but some are just, waiting out for better, I guess, conditions. Pero yun.
Okay, so so may appointment na, di ba? And you mentioned earlier about going to cadetship. So I asked JJ to explain what the cadetship is all about, what you're expected to do there, if any, and then ano yung next stage after the cadetship.
Right. So cadetship basically is a 6-month period of training under the Foreign Service Institute, which is the in-house diplomatic training academy in the DFA. So you have 6 months of classroom lectures on various topics, so basically to prepare you and equip you for your new role as FSO. So in addition to classroom trainings, you would also have like all sort of interesting things like at least in our case, we were taught how to sing, we were taught how to dance. We had this, I think we had 2 weeks at CCP learning under our best artistic directors. There were tours in various locations around the Philippines. After my period, but the batches nowadays, they would also be assigned at post to undertake parang some sort of an on-the-job training. So they would see how FSOs work at Post. So in our case in Beijing, I was able to work with 2 cadetship FSOs. So that's 6 months. So under the law, you need to undergo training for a year, and that's 6 months in the classroom and 6 months on the job. So after cadetship, you graduate. You also present a policy paper, which they would also grade.
Simple pause. I think we're losing you a bit,
I
JJ.
think in Marcos' case, nauna yung on-the-job training.
So question, dito
Yes.
sa cadetship ba, can somebody still flunk out or hindi na? But do you
No.
get graded like pass or fail? Hindi rin.
So I think you don't, because once you pass the FSO exam and then you get the appointment, you're already an officer. So the president has appointed you already. So they can't take that away from you. But you cannot get posted until you finish your cadetship. So you can, if you fail cadetship, and usually people who fail cadetship would be because of attendance. So if you don't finish your cadetship, you can't get posted until you finish it. So it will come back to haunt you.
In fact, if you're not attending your cadetship, you're technically not coming to work because that's working.
Okay. So pwede kang i-awol pag hindi ka ano.
Yeah.
Further to what JJ said, additional things I remember from cadetship, there were some great talks on culture. You are required to sing and dance, whether you like it or not. They will make you sing and dance. May choir training pa kami dati.
So that's an end, hindi siya sing or dance, right?
No, it's both.
Dance. Wow.
Actually,
Sasayaw ka talaga ng karinyosa, maglalabas ka ng tungkod, maglalabas ka talaga ng panuelo at sasayaw kayo. So talagang,
I mean, in our batch, we had to sing at our graduation. I don't know if they still do that.
Wow.
kami hindi, pero meron kaming performance in a DFA event. There was a performance where we had to sing. So bring out the new guys, have them sing and dance. Policy paper, kasama yun. Hindi lang policy paper actually, may batch project pa. I don't know if that was sa inyo.
Yeah.
So your batch has to come up with a project na will improve the DFA services or whatever it is that you think of.
So
that you
what
would
your batch
present.
project?
Our batch was parang gumawa kami ng tourism information portal which was aggregating data and images and information about the Philippines na para sa mini encyclopedia about Philippine attractions. Kasi we noticed even though DOT had a site, it didn't have like parang Wikipedia style entries regarding what places were in the Philippines. So that was our thing. I don't know kung ano yung project ni Marco and
Kayo, JJ.
Marco, good luck sa
Mag-isip pa lang sila.
Our batch project wasn't as ambitious as that. We organized speaking engagements for Justice Carpio to promote the arbitration. So
that's useful too.
Kayo, Marco.
Mag-isip na kayo.
Yeah.
The imagination.
Layo pa siya. Hindi pa siya concrete sa
Tignan mo
akin.
yung bar na sinet nila. So,
But your batchmates in your cadetship are your batchmates talaga. Yun yung ka-close mo. You'll be together for 6 months eh.
Yeah.
So, yung meron people who have deferred or technically in a previous batch. Pero sila yung ka-close namin kasi you're there every day for 6 months, you're learning. Yeah. So, ano.
And to quote
it's going to be it's going to be interesting kina Marco kasi hindi sila face-to-face, right? Tama ba ako? Hindi kayo face-to-face, right?
Yep, most of it, at least on the way it's structured now. No? Things might change kapag nawala na yung pandemya. But right now, it's going to be virtual for the most part.
So
I think JJ wanted to mention something, no?
Yeah, but you would be the first batch na hindi makakatikim ng FSI coffee, which is the very famous powdered coffee sa FSI.
Oh my God.
No, but I was just saying na parang there was one senior like ambassador now somewhere in Europe who was our lecturer at our cadetship, and he was like, you guys already passed the exam, you already know what I'm gonna talk about, and cadetship really is just to gel you as a batch. It's really to build your camaraderie. So don't take it too seriously. I mean, that's his perspective, but I think there's also some truth to that as well.
True, parang hold and like following on to that. There's a lot of stuff that we covered in cadetship, like how to write diplomatic correspondence, and then how may briefings kami in West Philippine Sea, may briefings on Philippine culture, and then writing itself, cultivating writing style, may language classes pa. But the practical training that I received was of more use to me in my professional life. On-the-job training is what I use more. Yeah, the cadetship really fosters your camaraderie, but it's very it tackles so many subjects that you might not be handling in the future. You don't know if you're going to handle in the future, but it's stuff that you should know as an FSO, but you might not necessarily be handling it in the future.
Yeah.
So you will learn a lot more when you get sent to your specific office. And since DFA selects for people who are adaptable and who learn quickly, that's what you're expected to do. Itatapon ka sa consular, learn it there. Itatapon ka sa multilateral, learn it right then and there. Like, start reading up, parang ganun siya.
So yung next, so you've already completed your cadetship, and then ang tawag mo doon, ipopost ka or what? Yung pag
i-assign ka sa office,
diba?
yeah.
Oo.
Not
So, ano yung parameters nun? Like, do you get to choose who gets to choose for you? Can you say no? So wala. So when they say you need to go here, you need to go there.
In my case, I kind of set up a job interview for myself. Kasi after cadetship, the Foreign Service Institute head at that time was Yusek Lula del Rosario. And she was also heading concurrently, mabigat yung trabaho niya nun. She was also our Undersecretary for International Econ Relations. And I wanted to work with her, even though she was very hard on us on purpose during cadetship. Like every time she'd come in, downer siya. Isa ang ginagawa niyo ngayon, parang she was hard on us para hindi kami magka-ere. Kasi it can be a problem, like people will come in and start calling themselves consul, hindi pa naman post ever, like, giving themselves titles. She was trying to avoid that problem. So she was hard on us on purpose and like really dampening egos, diba? So when I knew that she was handling econ affairs, the first day after cadetship, I took the elevator up. And then I wanted to speak to her and say, would you take me in sa kanyang office? And sa kabutihang palad, kinuha niya ako. It might be that way for other people, but more often than not, they will tell you where to go. They'll evaluate, for example, what you're good at. Marco has considerable experience in training, which is why he was put in HR. I'm guessing. So they'll look at where sometimes though malas na. I mean, they won't even look at what you're good at. They'll just put you in a place that you need to be. So kasi you're
because may vacancy.
Correct. Or more importantly, kailangan ng officer. Yeah, I mean, because these are the discussions we're having in HR, because we will get requests from offices na matagal na walang officer itong particular na opisina. Kailangan punuin yun. And you need to balance selecting for strengths of FSOs with the workforce demands naman of the office. Right? I mean, and I think it's a reasonable thing to assign someone who may not be the strongest in this area, because the construct of the test is that it should test for general well-roundedness. Parang kumbaga Swiss Army knife ka.
Yeah.
Alam mo yun? So it's not always a perfect fit, but I think from a human resources standpoint, we try to select for strengths talaga, lalo na when we have a competency framework in place now. So we're trying to square that with workforce demands naman ng offices. But you can't say no when you're assigned to an office.
Sundalo.
So at any point, you can't say no, like even after that, kung kunyari sa posting.
Well, posting kasi you are invited to apply for posts. I mean, the term is bidding, right? I have yet I don't know, maybe Mikhal and Jay, you can speak to this better than I have, but at least from the conversations I've had in the office, wala pa nang pinwersa, o pumunta ka dito, o pumunta ka dyan. I mean, there may have been situations where dahil matagal nang walang head of post, may pinadalang officer at to serve as charge d'affaires. But your posting is something you actually bid for, and these two gentlemen have done that for themselves, diba?
Malaking factor sa posting kasi yung how you gel with your boss. That's probably the most important factor. Because it doesn't matter how good you are. If you're not going to get along well with your ambassador, wow, that's going to be a problem for everybody at post. Kasi kokonti lang kayo, you need to rely on each other. And if you can't work together, life is hard for everybody. So talagang malaki yung say ng ambassador. Hindi naman 100% siya lang may say. The department also has some inputs, some considerable inputs there. Pero a big proportion of what goes behind the decision of sending this person there or somewhere is what their working relationship will be with the boss.
So, ibig sabihin nito, the ambassador or head of mission will also interview the foreign service officer that's applying for the post.
Yes.
Pwede. It's also possible, like in my case, I did not really bid for Beijing. It was the ambassador that sent my name. So that can also happen. So the ambassador can also request for a certain person from HR, and if that person is eligible, then HR is supposed to give due consideration. But sabi nga, it's really the ambassador that is the most important person at post. So the department really wants to make sure that he gets. Kasi the FSOs are basically just the ambassador's tools, di ba? Parang makamay tayo ng ambassador. So the department wants to make sure na he gets the able hands. So.
Yeah.
Sige, so now that you've all become FSO, so I think I also want to move toward discussion of how it is working for the department, and katulad ni Mikhal at saka ni JJ, so they've been abroad already. So ano yung challenges sa kanilang personal lives, yun. Actually, yun ang pinaka-curious ako. In terms of, kasi ako, di ba, I never planned to work or go out of the Philippines. I'm perfectly happy here. But at some point, I will have to.
You can stay there if you want.
No, depending
no
on where you go. What if I want to go where you go? Anyway, so, curious kasi ako dun sa parang medyo nomadic lifestyle in a way. 'Di ba? Although medyo mas organized lang kasi may time periods, pero you get uprooted every now and then. And you pack all your belongings, etc. How was your period of adjustment, or was there any dun sa ganung klaseng life?
JJ?
No, I mean, I honestly agree with your characterization. It's a nomadic life. I mean, I was in Beijing for 3 years. I'll be here for 3 years. 3 years is fairly long, but even if it's long, you don't get the sense that you're gonna be here for 3 years. You're always like, you're in a transient state. So parang even in the choice of furniture, parang you don't want to go buy like really good furniture because you're gonna leave this place anyway. So you have that mindset that you know nothing is permanent. So I think you hit it right. It's really a nomadic life. For me, I'm lucky because I'm not married, so it's less of a hassle for me. I can imagine it might be more difficult for those who have kids. Kasi like if the kids would make friends now with classmates in their school, and then after 3 years you're going to have to uproot them. And it might also be more difficult, I think, for female officers who have partners that could be a little traditional in terms of their gender roles, and also like LGBT couples. Like I think HR must be mindful also not to send LGBT officers with an LGBT partner to a country that's not very hospitable to that kind of relationship. So I can't really speak about my like nomadic adjustment that much, because I think it's nothing compared to what those other colleagues are going through. So for me, I think I'm quite lucky.
But isn't it also difficult for you to parang form personal relationships with people that you work with? Kasi parang everything is temporary, di ba? Parang not just dun sa work, but even yung people around you, parang hindi ka makapag-emotional investment.
Right. That's why I think most DFA people are really, the circle is really the people at post. So, you mentioned about whether or not there have been changes in the exam. I remember seniors telling me that during their time, you're required to bring your partner to the orals.
Oh.
So the seniors can see your partner and
Ang
see.
swerte mo, Marco.
Because I think that's also like I
Hardship
think
averted.
because I think very important din yun eh. Very important also to make sure na yung the psychological makeup of the partner is also well suited for that kind of lifestyle. And I think most of us, ang immediate circle talaga would be people at post. Like in my case, I try to make friends with others, but as I said, I have this like transient mindset, so I don't think I can invest emotionally in them, as you said. So it's really just the people at post.
So
To add to
Mikhal's
that,
case is a bit different, di ba? Kasi syempre
Yeah.
you're married. And Heidi was able to go with you. But still, di ba? Tama ba ako? Parang ano lang naman kayo eh. Bago pa kayong married. I mean, you're not that long na kinasal when you went to Mexico. So how was it?
We'd only been married 2 years when we went to Mexico in 2014. We're very fortunate kasi Heidi works online. So mobile siya. So you can only imagine the difficulty. We have, as JJ mentioned, we have officers na ang spouse nila ay established na sa Pilipinas. Abogado, doktor, ganun. So that's a wrench talaga to take them out of that if the family adjusts in such a way. And we have our colleagues, staff, full family of 5 with 3 kids, diba? Talagang uprooted ka talaga. It's a mental preparation and a choice that your family has to make together. And ano siya, you're 6 years out, 3 years in, 6 years out, 3 years in. Ganun yung cycle, typically. And that comes with the entire difficulty of moving your whole life, finding new schools for your children. Wala kaming anak ni Heidi, pero we can of course, we know the difficulties that our colleagues go through because our colleagues at Post have these kids with them. And JJ mentioned, for example, hindi siya incentivized to buy heavy furniture, for example. Kami rin, we were as much as possible fully furnished yung kinukuha naming natirahan. Pero down the line, hindi rin siya feasible or possible to keep up kasi yung mga senior officers are expected to fully furnish their houses with Filipiniana and to have something presentable. So hindi lang when you're in the higher offices na, you can't simply just go from post to post just using IKEA, for example. You have to be
Pwedeng
able to
minimalist.
pwedeng minimalist. You have to be able to inspect yung bahay niyo. Ambassador inspect your house and see that it's and your household as well. So parang you're all part of, hindi naman the show, no? Pero you are presenting the country. So it's not just the officer, it's also their family. So tinitignan din ng mga ambassadors yung mga spouses, lalo na pag National Day, dress appropriately. Hindi lang National Day, mga Mexico, kami, ang ambassador namin ay ginamit niya lahat talaga ng tao kasi maliit ang embassy namin, lahat ng taong ginamit niya. Yeah. So yung spouses ay nagsayaw din, nagmodel ng Filipiniana. Lahat ng kung anumang talent ang meron kayo, ilalabas niya yan pag maliit yung post. And
Marco, I got you.
Very talented si Cecile. You're very
No,
lucky.
actually, hindi ko problema yung mag-perform. Ang problema ko yung social media ko.
That's another thing. So I'm just telling you right now.
Yeah.
So it's all evaluated. It's all taken as a whole, no? So Um, what else was discussed? Friendships. Yeah, it's very hard to leave. We had some very close friends in Madrid, na Filipino rin, who are based there. We miss them. We talked to a lot of them, even halos daily nga yung chat. No, when we left nga, they gave a farewell party. I think it's got a bit teary kasi, we were sure that we won't be seeing them for a good few more years talaga. And it's hard, no? It's hard to make these connections only to pull away.
Yeah.
If you know you're gonna have to pull away. And that's the nature of the job. When we say goodbye to our fellow diplomats, we never say goodbye. We just say see you soon, see you around, because sooner or later you probably will see each other around it. But when it's people who live in the place that you were posted in, naging kaibigan nyo, that's hard.
And this kind of what do you call this? Yung cycle na you stay in the Philippines and then get posted and stay in the Philippines and get posted hanggang retirement ito. Hindi nangyayari yung okay dahil sa 50 plus ka na you can stay in the Philippines. Walang mga ganon.
Well, there is a cap. When you hit 63, I think that already disqualifies you for posting under our personal rules. No?
Yeah.
But some people have opted to stay at home longer than 3 years because they have projects they want to execute, and that's respectable because work at the home office is still part of the foreign service.
Yeah.
So there are people who have elected to stay longer than the cycle of the 6-3 cycle. There are people that have also opted for an early recall in some cases for a variety of reasons.
Pero yung hindi ka pwedeng ma-promote until you've actually been posted at least once. You need to have a foreign posting at least once.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean I had an interesting conversation about that with my former boss. And I was asking, sabi ko, just reading the room and reading the organization, I kind of sense that people see posting as a perk and should be treated as sabi niya, well, that there is a perk to it, but if you really think about it, it's part of the job. You should actually be posted because otherwise, why would we have a special law mandating a specific kind of a specific kind of personnel? In fact, our items in DBM are unique. A foreign service staff employee, foreign service staff officer, foreign service officer, etc., etc. There are no other FS items elsewhere.
It's not civil service; it's foreign service.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's a distinction.
Yeah, and to your point, I actually confirm Mikhal's statement about you can't be promoted because it's expected of you to be posted to serve in the locations where we operate, whether in the home office or at post.
So we talked earlier about the difficulties of working and living abroad and the difficulties of forming personal relationships, investing even in furniture, etc. But what are the great things about working in the post? JJ.
Well, it's really the experience, no? I mean, I can't explain it. Parang, well, I worked. My first posting was Beijing, and I really loved it. So I was doing both political and ATN, assistance to nationals. So both of them are really very thrilling for me. Like in political, I did like South China Sea. So it's like you're really part of the action. So parang if only I could keep all the confidential documents so I can, like back to
Write
them.
a book.
and reminisce about them. Parang for me, that's really fulfilling. But it's also about like going to visit a Pinoy who is in jail in some far-flung Chinese province, and then talking to a judge and making representations, and that very very simple parang gesture would result in reduction of sentence by 3 years, and then parang sobrang happy no Pinoy, and as if you did so much for them already. Parang for me, that's also like that privilege. I think it's I can't articulate it very well, but it's very fulfilling. Obviously, learning new things, seeing new things. I think we have a social media series about the FSO, like meeting world leaders or singing songs and things like that. I mean, hindi siya cliche. I think for me, that's it's really a privilege to be posted. But there are challenges like adjustments working. I mean, sa lifestyle in certain areas like culture shocks, sometimes even discrimination. I mean, in some areas. So for me, it's a really fulfilling career. I can't imagine myself doing any other
So,
thing.
marunong ka lang mamalengke na mag-Chinese and, you know, yung hindi sa grocery, like go to the Chinese palengke and, be able to purchase whatever.
No, hindi. Yun ang hindi ko nagawa in China. I stuck with yung mga expat, expat groceries. Pero here in Geneva, it's so expensive. So natutunan ko mag-cross ng border to buy my groceries in France. Kasi like 50% less.
Wow.
Yeah, so yeah, meron ding mga showbiz moments. Like for example, I attended this Sinulog festival. So may mga tita na mga Catholic groups. And then the next day, I was at the main station, parang minding my business. Tapos may mga grupo ng mga tita nagsisigaw, parang consul, selfie. That's so embarrassing. I mean, like little things like that. It's. I think those are the perks, more than the parang traveling or things like that. I think those are really what makes it very worthwhile.
Ikaw, Mikhal, what are the great memories from Mexico and Madrid?
Oh my God, ang daming nangyari na in the past 7. Yeah, 4 years in Mexico, 3 years in Madrid kasi there was an extension request I was fortunate enough to get it granted. Lahat ng roles na siguro sa embassy ay nagampanan ko na. Nag-political econ ako sa Mexico and in Mexico, I was political and econ. I was assistant to nationals. I was also consular. In Madrid, I was political econ, also did some consular. Then toward the end of it, hinawakan ko rin concurrently yung cultural. So a real spread. In Mexico, it was literally, I could be attending a reception with, senior officials from Mexican government. The next week, I'd be flying off to Ciudad Juarez to deliver consular services. Then another day, I might be boarding a boat to get to a ship to attend to some Filipinos who've been stranded there for months, then talking to a judge on their behalf, visiting Filipinos in jail in Nicaragua, in Honduras. There were some tough places too, medyo delikado yung iba. Getting to meet the Filipinos there in Central America was an experience. Nilindol ang Mexico City noong 2017 at nakaka-trauma talaga siya. My wife and I went through 2 huge earthquakes in the space of like a couple of weeks, and the quake actually destroyed the embassy, where we had to we ran outdoors. That's the tough part. We ran outdoors. The whole world was shaking back and forth, and in that moment, you didn't know kung madadagan kayo ng building o hindi. Kasi we were literally running outside our building, getting thrown left and right from the force. Ganun kalakas yung quake, which was like 7.2. Then a week later, another 7.1 or 7.2 also hit. So, tough times, but very memorable times. Ang dami namin ginawa, ang daming experiences kasi konti lang kami. You're attending to such a large area. We had 10 countries under jurisdiction. Oh, how can I forget? Cuba. I went to Cuba 4 times. Havana, which fantastic. I mean, very eye-opening experience. Iba talaga ang buhay doon. Ibang sistema nila doon. And then you really appreciate things differently after seeing how things are done in different parts of the world. Mexico pa lang yun. Tapos may Madrid pa. And then both Mexico and Spain were eye-openers in how I saw Philippine history. Ang dami kong elements that I took for granted. about the Philippines and our relation with our past and with Mexico and Spain especially. Things I took for granted regarding our language, regarding our culture. Now with new eyes, with a new appreciation for what it meant to be an independent country, for one thing. Na keep imagining, what if we were not, what if we were still a colony? Grabe, parang mag-iba yung, and then you see how they see you, like how the Spanish would see Filipinos. I didn't agree with all of it, that's for sure. Pero there was definitely also things to learn, a lot of things to learn about ourselves. Yun lang. Ang daming nangyari na napaka-memorable, and since I had to be like a jack of all trades, literally was doing all sorts of things. And it was very, I don't know what other kind of job would let you do this sort of thing, would expose you to such a wide array. And you're still doing public service, you're still doing something that's directly related to, the interests of the country. You're also able to help Filipinos who are in need right then and there. You're the closest person who they can reach out to for help. That part is fulfilling. And sorry, I'm rambling, pero ang dami talagang nangyari. Ang dami pwede pag-usapan na it's a life less ordinary talaga with this kind of job. It's really, it's very unique as an experience.
So
just to add yung
go ahead.
If I just wanted to add yung experience about yung sa Lindol, yung mga traumatic experiences like that. Parang what you would realize is parang, oh my God, lumilindol, but you need to have the presence of mind kasi ikaw yung Pilipinas doon. So paano yung mga Pilipino, parang paano yung contingency mo, paano sila, parang you really have to be in charge. Like if parang kailangan mo gumawa ng media lines, kailangan mo gumawa ng advisory sa mga Pinoy. So I think that also just yung character, parang it builds a sense of personal responsibility as well, na parang you're not just before thinking of yourself as a victim, parang may isip mo na meron kang kailangang pangalagaan. So, and I also agree yung sense of sorry.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna agree yung sa sense of parang really watching yung being part of history in a way, na parang watching how these countries evolve and how they see us and how these affect the Philippine history. Parang, and yet it's still public service. So parang for me it's one of the most exciting form of public service. Yeah, yun lang.
So speaking of public service, so syempre, 'di ba, both of you were outside the country during the time na kasagsagan nitong pandemic, when everything was actually still very uncertain. So in your respective locations, were you also required by the circumstances to do stuff for Filipinos where you were?
For us, we were in Madrid during last year, so we were monitoring Filipinos who had died or who were sick, making calls. In fact, nag-ambagan din kami sa embassy to do like a parang grocery credit kind of service. So instead of people coming to the embassy to pick up food package, we gave it to people who were in need. Grocery credits. They went to the Filipino stores kasi meron sa Madrid na grocery. May credit sila to buy essentials. And then we had a labor attaché. We have a labor attaché as well in Madrid. They also gave out some aid. For pandemic purposes, that's what we had to do to adjust. Of course, na-wipe out yung plans namin for the year. Kasi dami namin nakaplanong cultural events. We were supposed to participate in a book fair, wipe out lahat yun. Wala ring pera. Na-redirect eh. So we had to adapt again. My colleague si Raisa changed the whole National Day celebration by making June of last year El Mes Filipino, the Filipino month, where literally every single day of that month for 30 days she had a webinar on various topics. So yung embassy featured cuisine of Filipino restaurants one by one. Tapos we had musical performers, We had academics talking about things of interest, Spanish and Filipino academics alike talking about things of Filipino interest. Ganun yung pivot. So, ganun din ginawa when I took over portfolio. Ganun din yung pivot namin. Buwan ng wika was completely virtual. We had a webinar on Chabacano, webinar on Philippine English in the Oxford Dictionary, stuff like that. And bye-bye. And then I think a project I'm particularly happy about was that we got to complete a virtual walking tour of Rizal's Madrid, where we did instead of kasi we had a Philippine academic, si Dr. Ross Costello, who was able to give a walking tour, but instead of giving it to Filipinos in person, filmed the whole thing, edited it together with the help of some great talents from Madrid and Filipino rin. And then it became a 30-minute mini documentary, which people can now view everywhere. And then it was very gratifying to see that DLSU and UP history departments were saying they would show this to their students. And that kind of project was very gratifying to see that may kwenta, diba? May use siya sa ibang tao. So that's how we had to adapt to the pandemic period, assisting Filipinos in the capacity where we could, delivering services despite the pandemic going on, tuloy pa rin yung consular services namin dun. And then adjusting our whole program to still be able to deliver yung mga goals namin, to deliver on our goals like cultural promotion, despite not being able to meet people in person.
Yeah.
So,
did you have to repatriate Filipinos from Madrid as well?
Yeah, we did as well. We did have to do that as well.
Kayo, JJ?
Well, in my case, I was in China when the pandemic started in Wuhan. I mean, the epidemic pa lang, no, in Wuhan. At that time, it wasn't a pandemic yet. And I remember because I was in the political section covering it. And I remember, I mean, me, because, you know, in my line of work, I meet with everyone, like dissidents, academics, people like that. And some of the people in Beijing were saying that this is a fake flu because the party's just creating it as a distraction from the Hong Kong protest. So I remember those like conspiracy theories. And then December, I moved to Geneva. So February I moved to Geneva. And then the lockdown started a week after I got my apartment. So wala pa akong furniture masyado. Hindi pa na-deliver from IKEA. So that was quite challenging when the lockdown happened. I guess on two fronts. First would be like, I'm a new officer, pero I had to be part of the team that monitored cases of Filipinos getting COVID. Making sure that we have contingencies in place. We have funds ready in case we need to repatriate them, but none of them wanted to be repatriated. We coordinated with the Filipino community organizations to make sure that we can have like immediate relief for Filipinos in distress. Kasi we know that it would take time to get the funds. And then eventually kami din nagka-COVID. So I mean in the office, I think like 90% of us had COVID eventually. Wow. So there's that, but we cope. I think we're lucky compared with other posts. So we always, our ambassador would always tell us na you guys are lucky you're not in other posts. So parang don't complain, things like that. So that's the Philippine side, but we're also doing the UN side. I mean, while the lockdown was ongoing, parang UN work continued. Like UN diplomats who would insist that, you know, our work should not be disrupted by the pandemic. Actually, parang for me, it's quite funny because you already canceled the Olympics, you already canceled a lot of big events, but UN people don't want to cancel their meetings. Until it dawned on me that if we don't meet as member states, if we don't meet and adopt certain procedural decisions, then the salaries of the UN staff will not be paid the next year because we are the ones adopting the budget. And there are certain rules on how the UN can meet. So we had to like devise ways to parang skirt those technicalities and make sure that our meetings that are virtual would still be valid member states meeting. So that was quite tough because in many of these meetings, we are the president, like the Philippines is the presiding country. And then I was new and I had to coordinate with many missions And usually in these kind of things, you don't coordinate through diplomatic notes. You need to have like the personal connection. You have to be able to WhatsApp certain missions. But I was new and I had no time to like have coffee with people and meet people. So that was really quite a challenge. So what I did was kinapalan ko talaga yung mukha ko and got everybody's WhatsApp, and then para akong stalker and saying, hey, I'm JJ, I'm new, I'm from the Philippine mission. Can we have a WhatsApp, Zoom, or whatever, and do this? So yeah, it took a while. Now we're quite used to it, and some people are saying that maybe we should do this all the time. Baka hindi na kailangan ng diplomats.
So what about you, Marco? So you're with the home office right now. What initiatives did you do, or what projects did you get into for
Yeah.
response to the COVID pandemic?
Well, I joined in January 2020, and when I came in, I said, finally, I get to work with a desk, I'll use paper, I won't have to deal with email anymore. Then March hit. Here we are working from home, and I guess it follows me wherever I go. But I think, at least in the years I've spent in the home office, I think I appreciated the importance of the home office in keeping the entire foreign service together, because everything that the post will need to do needs to have a link back to the home office. Kung may ATN case dyan, kung may repatriation dyan, may link sa amin yan eh. I mean, the most obvious and most concrete of which is, for example, pera. Diba? Laking bagay yon. That needs to be linked with us. So it was up to HRMO, at least yung where we operated, was to make sure that we, number one, are still able to do with some of our core tasks, like for example, supplying people to posts. We knew that there were lockdowns, but we knew that we also need to staff posts that had people just recalled in December, and now there were posts that had 2, 3, 5 people that were recalled and have not had a replacement in as late as February or March. So we had to find ways to, well, of course, funding, of course, and also be able to facilitate the fast tracking of these people who have to go to what do you call this, to post. No? Some of the things that we did was that we all, in a way, there was a, I feel bad for saying this, but HRM also saw the opportunity to take DFA towards more more modern ways of working, because the crisis really, for us in HRM, we can't waste this opportunity to get people used to the tools that we've always had. It's not like they were there. It's always been there. It's just that people were didn't feel the impetus to, the need rather, to use it, and now they had no choice. And it was not just about building competence in people, but really building confidence in using the technology, because that's one thing that was that struck me when I was doing all these G Suite sessions. So the first few sessions, the questions were around what if they make a mistake and all of that, or I'm not techy enough. And maybe this is also because of my general psychological makeup. Ang thinking ko noon is, nag-Facebook ko araw-araw, hindi mo natututo ng G Suite. So, alam mo yun, parang to me, it was really a question of getting people confident na it's actually easy and it makes my life better. And I'm glad to see that not only have the tools been adopted, but people have found ways to be creative with it. And to me, that's energizing. And I think the whole human resources office is really proud to have contributed that small amount in the way we do our work. And I don't think that we're ever going to come back to the way we used to work, because now we are feeling the efficiencies that we've gained by doing this. So it's not without its human cost, because there is also that fatigue from work from home, and HRM has recognized that. So we continue to find ways to alleviate that problem. But I'm happy to have been part of the team that really took advantage of this crisis to get the DFA moving into more modern ways of working.
Let me just say, as somebody who absolutely hates to see paper being wasted, thank you, Marco, for helping to move DFA into G Suite more in the useless paper. Thank you.
It's fun. I mean, I got to meet people at post because um, I have to thank our head of office for really giving us the latitude to try new things. Kasi, like for example, tinatanong nun, ang proposal kasi namin, let's train the post. Let's train the post in G. But there are different times. O, ano ngayon? Edi, I'll do it in the evenings. And it was a good experience because before I start, chichikahan muna ako with the post. And it was also a great experience for me to learn from them on a very casual level because I would ask them the situation in COVID there, kumusta mga Pilipino doon. And nakatuwa siya for me as well. Parang hindi pa ako napopost, but parang ang dami ko na pick up from those small conversations before I did my sessions with them. So, yun. Funny story, There's, my sister's in London right now. So, she had to renew her passport. Sabi niya, Harder? Kapatid mo ba si Marco? Oo, nanonood sa DFA yun. Oo, nag-train sa amin. Sabi para my name is getting everywhere without me, So, yung mga ganong nakakatuwang story, nakakatuwa siya. So, yun. Yun lang.
And on that note, since ang haba na ng discussion, thank you guys for obliging me with your presence and with your stories. I hope we have encouraged and inspired people to join the DFA. Kahit na hindi na siguro kayo mag-FSO, pero mas maganda yung experience pag mag-FSO kayo eh. Kasi different talaga yung perspective na makukuha. Of course, as they said, it takes a lot of commitment. As in talagang, para siyang priesthood, in a way. Nung pinapakinggan ko yung kwento ninyo. Although, syempre, medyo iba nga yung experiences you said when it comes to women. Pero, ganun din yung level of commitment, the self-sacrifice that you have to make. Para siyang priesthood. Feeling ko.
Let me just assure you, any celibacy is optional, okay? Just that's a personal thing.
Good to know. So anyway, I'd like to thank you guys again. And for those who are interested in getting to know more about the exam, you need to go to the DFA social media platforms. I think
Yes.
they have been running several promotional and educational and awareness posts on the FSO and what FSOs do. Yan. And if you have questions, I guess you can ask me and I can forward it to the person who can answer, or actually mas appropriate siguro na ibibigay ko na lang sa inyo yung link kung sino yung pwede ninyong tanungin for it. But anyway, yun, I hope you try to learn more about what the DFA is doing for the country. Hindi lang naman talaga siya about, West Philippine Sea. Hindi lang din siya about, ano pa bang mga problema natin? OFWs.
Passports.
Alam mo yun, marami rin tayong citizens abroad na hindi OFWs at may kanya-kanya din silang issues. So, ayan. Actually, pag pag DFA, lang siya, hindi lang siya public international law. May private issues din dyan nakasama. And since kayo yung nag-work sa post, kailangan problemahin din ninyo yung mga personal problems ng mga citizens abroad. So nung nag-take ako ng private international law, medyo kakaiba din siya. And I'm sure dahil sa yung mga kwento ninyo would be talagang on the ground, yung makikita mo talaga yung kwentong buhay ng mga tao. It's going to be very interesting. But at the same time, siguro kinaganda na rin niya, kahit na mahirap yung trabaho, dahil nga sa nobody kayo, pwedeng hindi ka masyadong mag-invest emotionally. It's also for your sanity, di ba? Kasi if masyado kang tutok dun sa lahat ng nangyayari, minsan masakit siya sa puso. But anyway, being in DFA is an exciting and fulfilling and I think personally enriching experience. So for all those who are watching, I hope you do check it out. Thank you again, guys, for joining me and talking about your experiences in the exam and in working for the DFA. So thank you. And thank you
so much.
Thank you guys for watching. Meet the Fresh reboot. Anything else that you'd like to say for those who are planning to join? Any last words? Go for it.
As someone from, as I've said at the beginning of this the call, I personally have a stake in this because I work for the Human Resources Management Office, and if any of our viewers are interested in taking the exam, they can go to the social media platforms, or they can go straight to the source, dfa.gov.ph/FSO exams. All the forms are there. All the information is there. You can even see the sequence of the exams and the themes that are covered in the written exams and the distribution of points. So we recommend that you go through it. And what I've been telling people when they ask me about the exam, look, what's it going to cost you? 3 vacation leaves, 500 pesos. The exam is like a great experience altogether. And if you are fortunate enough to pass it, then you're in for a bigger experience. So you might as well take it. The upside is really higher than whatever cost you may be thinking in your head. So again, it's dfa.gov.ph/FSO exams. And you'll find all the information there.
Okay, and on that note, thank you for joining us. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.